The check sat on the mahogany desk. $500,000. It was written in black ink, crisp, clean, professional. It was the exact amount they had agreed upon 3 months ago. Clara stared at the numbers. She should have been happy. This piece of paper was her freedom. It was her mother's heart surgery. It was the end of the double shifts at the diner and the nights spent shivering in her car. But she didn't feel free. She felt like her chest had been hollowed out with a spoon. She looked up at him. Julian was standing by the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. He was wearing the same tuxedo he had worn to the gala 3 hours ago, the gala where he had held her hand, where he had whispered jokes in her ear while the mayor spoke, where he had looked at her like she was the only person in the room. But the contract was over. Midnight had struck 10 minutes ago. The carriage had turned back into a pumpkin, and the prince was back to being the CEO of Sterling Industries. "You should deposit that in the morning," Julian said. He didn't turn around. His voice was flat, cold. Clara reached for the check. Her hand trembled. "Thank you," she whispered. She stood up. Her legs felt heavy. She turned to leave, to walk out of the penthouse and back into her real life. She made it to the door. Her hand was on the brass handle. Clara. She froze. She waited, hoping, praying he would say something, anything, that he would tell her the last 90 days weren't just a transaction. Julian turned from the window. His face was pale. He looked older than he had 5 minutes ago. "There is one more thing," he said. He walked over to the wall safe hidden behind the painting. He spun the dial. Clara watched him. He wasn't reaching for more money. He wasn't reaching for a diamond necklace. He pulled out a small, battered cardboard box. It looked like trash. The corners were taped. It was stained with something dark. He walked over to her. He held the box out. His hands, usually so steady, were shaking. "This isn't part of the contract," he said. His voice broke. A sound she had never heard from him before. "This is the truth." Clara took the box. She opened the lid, and what she saw inside didn't just break her heart. It shattered her entire reality. Because inside that box wasn't a jewel or a key. It was a red wool mitten, small, knitted by hand, missing the thumb, and she knew exactly where the other one was. To understand why the mitten made Clara stop breathing, you have to go back to the diner, 3 months ago. It was a Tuesday. It was raining. The kind of cold, miserable Chicago rain that gets into your bones and stays there. Clara was on her 12th hour. Her feet were bleeding inside her cheap sneakers. She was counting her tips, $42. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. The eviction notice was in her back pocket. It had been there for 3 days, burning a hole in her jeans. The bell above the door chimed. She didn't look up. "We're closing in 10 minutes, she called out. "I only need 5. The voice was smooth, expensive. She looked up. He was sitting in booth 4, the one with the ripped vinyl seat. He was wearing a suit that cost more than the building. He had a watch that could pay off her mother's medical debt twice over. Julian Sterling. She recognized him from the newspapers left on the tables, the boy wonder of real estate, the man who bought skyscrapers like they were candy bars. "Can I get you coffee?" she asked. "No," he said. "I want to offer you a job." Clara laughed. It was a tired, bitter sound. "I'm not qualified to work at Sterling Industries," she said. "I didn't finish college. I'm not looking for an executive," Julian said. "I'm looking for a girlfriend." The diner went quiet. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to get louder. "Excuse me." "My grandmother is dying," Julian said. He didn't blink. He said it like he was reading a weather report. "She controls the trust. She won't release my shares of the company until she sees me settled down. She thinks I'm heartless." "Are you?" Clara asked. Julian looked at her. His eyes were gray. "Empty, probably," he said. He slid a contract across the table. 3 months, he said. "You move into the penthouse. We attend events. We visit the hospital on Sundays. You pretend to love me. I pretend to tolerate you. And in return, $500,000, he said, plus expenses." Clara looked at the contract. It was insane. It was dangerous. But then she thought about her mother. She thought about the surgery that the insurance company had denied yesterday morning. She picked up the pen. "There are rules," Julian said. "Rule number 1, no questions about my past. Rule number 2, we keep separate bedrooms. Rule number 3, he leaned forward. Under no circumstances do you fall in love with me." Clara signed her name. "Don't worry, Mr. Sterling," she said. That's the easiest money I'll ever make. She had no idea how wrong she was. The first month was easy. It was clothes, it was makeup artists. It was learning which fork to use for the salad. Julian was polite, distant. He treated her like a well-trained employee. But then came the hospital visits. Julian's grandmother was sharp. She was frail, lying in a bed that looked too big for her, but her eyes were like lasers. She held Clara's hand. "He's a good boy," she whispered one Sunday. "He just forgot how to be human. You have to teach him, Clara." Clara looked at Julian standing by the door, checking his email on his phone. He didn't look like he wanted to be taught. But slowly, the walls started to crack. It happened in small moments. The night she had a nightmare about the eviction, she woke up screaming. Julian was there in seconds. He wasn't wearing his suit. He was in a t-shirt. He looked scared. He didn't leave. He sat in the chair by her bed until she fell back asleep. He didn't say a word. He just stayed. Then there was the night she burned the grilled cheese. It was the chef's night off. Clara tried to cook. She set off the fire alarm. Julian ran into the kitchen. He saw her waving a towel at the smoke detector, coughing, holding a blackened sandwich. She expected him to yell, to tell her she was clumsy. Instead, he started laughing. It was a rusty sound, like an engine that hadn't been started in years. He took the towel from her. "I like my cheese extra crispy," he said. They ate the burnt sandwiches on the kitchen floor. He told her about his favorite book. She told him about her mom's flower garden. For an hour, he wasn't a billionaire. He was just a guy with cheese on his chin. But the closer they got, the more Clara felt the weight of the lie. She wasn't pretending anymore. When she looked at him across a crowded room, her heart didn't race because of the contract. It raced because he was Julian, and she could see him watching her too. There was a hunger in his eyes, a sadness. But every time they got too close, he pulled back. He would check his watch. He would mention the contract. He was terrified. And then came the gala, 3 days before the end. A woman in a red dress walked up to them. She was beautiful, expensive, cruel. "Well," she said, "Julian bought himself a new toy." She looked Clara up and down. "How much is he paying you, honey, or do you charge by the hour?" Clara felt the blood drain from her face. She waited for Julian to smooth it over, to make a polite excuse and walk away. That's what a businessman would do. But Julian didn't do that. He let go of Clara's hand. He stepped forward. He looked the woman in the eye. "She isn't a toy," Julian said. His voice was low. The entire table stopped eating. "She is the only real thing in this entire room." He took Clara's hand again. "And if you ever speak to her like that again, I will buy your husband's company and burn it to the ground just to fire you." He walked her out of the ballroom. In the elevator, Clara looked at him. "Why did you do that?" she asked. Julian didn't look at her. He was staring at the numbers changing on the display. "Because," he whispered, "I don't like it when people hurt what's mine." Mine, the word hung in the air, but the elevator dinged. The doors opened, and Julian walked away because the contract was ending, and rule number 3 was still in effect. Now, standing in the doorway of the penthouse, Clara looked down at the red mitten in the box. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She remembered the mitten. She remembered the day she lost the other one. It wasn't 3 months ago. It was 15 years ago. She was 12. She was living in Detroit. Her mom had just lost her job. They were living in a shelter on 8th Street. It was Christmas Eve. Clara was walking back from the store with a loaf of bread. It was snowing. She saw a boy in the alley behind the bakery. He was shivering. He was wearing a thin windbreaker. He had bruises on his face. He looked hungry. Clara didn't have money. She barely had food, but she had her mittens. Her mom had knitted them. Red wool. She walked into the alley. "Here," she said. She took off her left mitten. She handed it to the boy. He looked at her. His eyes were gray, empty, terrified. "Why?" he asked. "Because your hands are blue," she said. She gave him the bread too. She walked home with one cold hand. She never saw the boy again until now. Clara looked up from the box. She looked at Julian. "It was you," she whispered. Julian nodded. A tear slipped down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. "I ran away from foster care that night," Julian said. "I was going to give up. I was just going to sit in the snow and go to sleep." He took a step toward her. "Then a girl gave me her mitten and her bread." He touched the box. "I kept it every day. I told myself that if someone like you existed, then maybe the world wasn't completely hell. I worked. I fought. I scraped my way up from nothing because I wanted to be strong enough to find you. Clara felt the room spinning. You knew, she asked. When you came to the diner, you knew who I was. I knew, Julian said. I've known for 2 years. I watched you struggle, Clara. I watched you work 3 jobs. I watched you take care of your mother. I wanted to help you, but I knew you're proud, you wouldn't take charity. If I walked in and offered you $1 million, you would have thrown coffee in my face. Clara laughed, a watery, choked sound. Probably, she said, so I made up the girlfriend thing, Julian said. I made up the rules. I needed an excuse to give you the money, to save your mom. He looked down at the floor, but I broke the rules, Clara. I broke rule number 3. He looked up. His eyes were raw, open. I didn't fall in love with you over the last 3 months. I fell in love with you 15 years ago in an alley in Detroit. I just needed to be worthy of the girl who saved my life. He gestured to the check in her hand. That's yours, he said. You earned it. You saved me twice, Clara, once with bread and once with your company. You can go. Your mom's surgery is paid for. I took care of it this morning. He turned back to the window. He was letting her go because he loved her enough to let her be free. Clara looked at the check. $500,000. It was safety. It was security. She looked at the mitten in the box. It was love. It was history. It was a promise kept for 15 years. She looked at Julian's back. He was shaking, just slightly. He was waiting for the sound of the door closing. He was waiting to be alone again. Clara made a choice. She took the check in both hands, and she ripped it in half. The sound was loud in the quiet room. Julian spun around. What are you doing? He asked. I don't want it, Clara said. She tore the pieces in half again and again until they were just confetti. She let them fall to the floor. Julian stared at the paper. Clara, that's your future. No, Clara said. She walked over to him. She closed the distance. She reached into the box and took out the red mitten. She put it on her left hand. It was tight. It was small, but it fit. She reached out and took his hand, his cold, trembling hand. My future isn't on a piece of paper, she said. She looked up into his gray eyes. You said you broke rule number 3. Julian nodded. Well, Clara whispered, I broke it too. I fell in love with the boy in the alley, and I fell in love with the man who likes his grilled cheese burnt. Julian let out a breath. It sounded like a sob. He grabbed her. He pulled her close. He buried his face in her hair. I thought you'd leave, he whispered. I was so sure you'd leave. I'm not going anywhere, Clara said. She held him tight. The contract was void. The deal was done. There were no more rules. Julian pulled back. He looked at her. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the other mitten. It was frayed, worn thin, but he had kept it. He put it on his right hand. He held her hand up. The 2 red mittens met, a perfect pair, reunited after 15 years. We have a lot to talk about, Julian said. Clara smiled. We have time, she said. We have a lifetime outside. The snow started to fall over Chicago. But inside the penthouse, for the first time in a long time, it was warm. If this story warmed your heart, please hit that subscribe button. We share stories about love, destiny, and the moments that change our lives forever. Don't forget to like the video if you believe in soulmates.